Now, the reality of getting sentenced to a long time in prison means that you are inevitably going to be spending a long time away from women. Now, for a lot of married men, the thought of spending years in years in prison, could be quite a difficult one. Obviously, you don't get that soft touch of a woman. You miss the perfume, the nice way that women smell. That caring, reasonable conversation that you might have with a woman that you're definitely not going to have with a man. Sometimes you can be away from women for years, and it does have an effect on you. And obviously, it's difficult to cope with because it's maybe the first time in your life that you've not had the female of the species in your life. You're around a load of testosterone-filled men, beating their chest like apes quite a lot, and just the dynamic of being around a wing full of 200 men at a time with very little female contact is a bit weird sometimes. So I'm going to look at it and just give you some of my insight and the way that that manifests itself in prison. So obviously the first and an obvious one is masturbation. Blokes are disgusting, and a lot of the time, as long as you're in a single cell, as soon as they're behind that door, they'll be jerking off in some fashion. Obviously, this happens in double cells as well. You'll be surprised how many people will still try and masturbate quietly in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning when they've got a cellmate. Like I say, men are disgusting, and you can be thrown in with all sorts sometimes. You start to think back to every, because obviously, you start to your imagination is the only thing you've got for a time before you can get your hands on any kind of porn. So you think back to every girl you've ever slept with. You think back to all the girls that you didn't sleep with and that you could have done. On all those kind of nights out where you didn't fancy it for some reason, or you didn't want to sleep with that girl, and now you're stuck in prison for sort of years at a time, and you'd give anything for her to be in the cell, sat on your face right now. The reality of sort of the staff, you might end up getting a couple of women on the wing, but one of them might be old, one of them might be massive. You occasionally get some sort of good-looking kind of like Barbie girls on the wing, but they tend to be quite hard-faced, and they're not going to be sort of ditzy. They've heard everything you've got to say. You've got to imagine they live and they work in a male environment. So, these women are like like fucking female police officers. They fucking snap and bark at you. So there's very little sort of nice women you're going to be around in the offices and things. But it has been known a few times for female prison staff to obviously to sleep with male prisoners on occasion, but I never came across it in any of the prisons I was in, and it only happens very rarely. You tend to have it happen more in private prisons because the staff are a bit less trained there, and they can end up succumbing to the charms or the money of prisoners. So the staff aren't going to give you too much of a relief on the wing, but there'd always be some. I'd always remember there was this female member of staff in Exeter, and she used to really put the perfume on like loads. So as she came in to do the checks in the morning, and then she left again, you'd end up sort of just that perfume smell just hanging in the air, and it would always just be it'd be quite nice. But again, it's odd being deprived of kind of like female contact and things. You were allowed to buy porn, sort of porn magazines and things like this. You weren't allowed to buy sort of DVDs or anything like that when I was there. I don't think that's going to have changed since then. But you could have any number of porn magazines. The local newsagent always used to have the contract to supply the prison with newspapers and stuff, and the pile of porn magazines going into the prison would be just as big as the newspapers every day. They must have been making an absolute fucking killing. And it's odd because on the outside, blokes don't really talk about porn or sort of pass porn around or anything like that. Not in this sense, not in the scale that you do in prison. There's a lot of things you do in prison that are quite normal in prison, but are really unique outside. Like and it all sounds quite homoerotic, to be honest with you. So I've said before in some of my podcasts that you'll just go for a shower together. You know, you'll be bored on a Sunday afternoon and just, you know, you and your pals will just go for a shower, just for something to do. And that's definitely not something you'll ever do on the outside, but it's quite normal inside. It's almost, you know, it's normal inside for someone to just stick their head in through the door and just ask you if you've got any bash mags. You know, and you do a little bit, you know, you trade them like they're fucking Pokemon cards. Now, bearing in mind, obviously, as well, this being COVID times now, where, you know, everyone's much more switched on to, you know, washing your hands and dirty hands and stuff. Now, bearing in mind, again, like I say, men in prison were disgusting. Can you even just imagine sort of handing these magazines around and stuff? Like, oh, it's just fucking feels grim now. But yeah, they always used to get sort of passed around, and you'd see people. There'd be certain lads on the wing who'd have like piles of these magazines in their cupboards and under their beds and stuff like this. It's, you know, it's obviously the lack of female contact in prison drives you to extraordinary lengths. You weren't allowed to put any porn on the walls, or even page 3 girls, things like this. All the breasts and everything had to be covered. And the reason they'd say this, obviously, just to kind of keep the standards up, but also, you know, there's female members of staff that have to come in and check your cell and things. They don't want to be confronted with all this porn. I remember I talk about in one of my other stories. We got one of the lads one day because we saw this woman coming down checking all the cells, and my mate's door was open. So we just grabbed a load of porn magazines and sort of spread them all out, you know, all over the bed, and put a load of tissues all over the floor to make it look like he'd been jerking off all day. And we just left it there. Yeah, she came round and she fucking gave us a bollocking for fucking doing it and stuff. But yeah. Now there was a tape. I always remember, like, there was actual like a physical cassette tape, like a, you know, an audio tape. This was when I was in Portland, sort of years ago. And this girl had sent it in because you used to be able to send in cassette tapes back in the day, and as long as it was clear and you could sort of see through it. Now, she'd recorded it herself, you know, obviously masturbating at home, and this tape had been passed around so much. Like, the guy had obviously gone home and left it to his mates, and now this tape was sort of notorious on the wing. It was being passed around everywhere, and you know, obviously it is what it is. But the funny thing about it was she had this horrible smoker's cough. So while she was in the middle of talking sexy and sort of doing her thing, she kept sort of stopping and hacking up her fucking lungs. So everyone was just sort of more interested in just kind of listening to that and laughing, as much as the kind of porn side of things. But yeah, that was one of the things that made me laugh inside. And that tape may still be going round to this day, sort of 20 years later. Now, obviously, we used to get some contact with girls through sort of writing to other prisons. So someone would always have a contact with another girl in another prison, and you'd just ask him to kind of find out if she had any mates, and you'd send over the prison number, and, you know, a couple of letters would come back your way, and then you'd start writing to these girls, and they'd generally be, you know, in just some fucking female prison somewhere up the line. And they'd send you a few letters telling them about themselves, and then they'd send you some sort of filth, and you'd write some filth back to them and things. And, you know, this kind of just like mutual kind of boredom relief. It's, again, something that seems a bit odd out, you know, in the real world, or maybe it doesn't. You know, that's all Facebook is, really. But yeah, no, we always used to get hold of, you know, you'd be writing to females in other prisons and outside of prison as well. You know, obviously there's pen pals who just want to write to you to help you pass the time and things, but then there'd be other girls who'd really get off on writing to people in prison. And I'm always surprised by the amount of people who, you know, write to lifers, and those people you see, you know, those girls you see marrying people on death row. You know, this guy's never going to come out of prison, but he's so appealing to these women that they still end up, you know, marrying him. And only having prison contact with him. So yeah, this is what I mean. There's still women out there who will actively write to blokes in prison, regardless of what they've done or what they're in there for. Now, one of the times I remember it was quite hilarious was one of the family visits on the resettlement wing. Now, the resettlement wing is there to obviously help you build bonds with the outside. It's an opportunity to earn some money before you go out from your release. It's an opportunity to sort of build some links with the community and things as well. But one of the big things they like to do is they like to get you involved with your family. So you get these family day visits, basically, which is a bit like a normal visit. It's up in the visiting room, but you get all day up there. So you get like from 9 or 10 in the morning through to about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. You have food up there and everything. It's a lot less restrictive, so you can have your kids sat on your lap and stuff like this. But on the resettlement wing, they used to have another feature where for maybe half an hour in the middle of the day, everyone would come back down to the resettlement wing, and you could show your family around the your cell and the wing, just to kind of show them how you're living, basically. And that's a great idea on paper, but obviously you get 20, 30 horny prisoners who have suddenly got the opportunity to bring their wives and girlfriends back to the cell. And it was basically just, it was exactly what you can imagine. It was just a half an hour knocking shop. Now, it only happened for one of the visits while I was on the wing, because they obviously cottoned on what was going on, and they stopped it for the next visit I was there. But for that first visit, my family weren't interested in coming to see me, so I was one of the lads who had to take the wives, the mums and dads and the kids around the wing. There was about 6 or 7 of us who didn't have any family coming, so it was our job to chaperone the kids and the mums and dads around the wing, kind of awkwardly showing them here's the multi-gym, and here's the pool table, this is where we play table tennis on Thursdays, we're giving them, just trying to fill some bullshit time, while my pals were pile driving their missus in the cells. One of them had been in a car crash like a few days before, and my mate, his girlfriend was coming up, and she'd broken a handful of ribs and like was all bruised and everything. And he was just like, I don't care. I've waited 18 months for this. We're still going to have sex. And I just remember the poor girl. She still put out, and I just remember she must have been in pain. But this was the one opportunity to get laid that he might have had, in his 6-year sentence. So he definitely grasped it with both hands. Now, I was lucky enough, on that opportunity. I built my way up to being able to get out into the community, and I was getting town visits and home leaves and things like this. So during that one sentence, I was able to spend a lot of time with my girlfriend, and I'd book a B&B or a hotel room for the day, and I'd go out and spend the day out with her in that sense. But that was the only opportunity that I ever got to spend some alone time with a girl when I was on a sentence. But like I say, the rest of it is quite weird. Being away from women and being around men probably has a lot to do with the toxic male environment you get in prisons. Sometimes, that female word in your ear is what stops you from being a lunatic. But then often, a lot of time, the female word in your ear is the reason that we're lunatics. So it's something a bit different today. I thought I'd deal with the lack of women on hand in prison, and the lengths men go to be satisfied. Now, one of the weird things I nearly forgot about, like I say, porn in prison. I used to smuggle porn DVDs in at one point. I used to get them brought in by the staff, and I'd end up bringing them in myself. And I remember bringing this one DVD back onto the wing, and my mates were quite interested in having a watch. So for the first time in my life, I'm sat there with about 3 or 4 of my friends. We're all just sat in the cell watching porn. And everyone's just kind of gobsmacked, like it's like an action movie. We're all just kind of sat there, wide-eyed and everything, watching it. And it's one of those situations that's, again, fairly normal in prison, but you would never ever sit there just watching a porno with your mates on the outside. Well, not normally. I don't know. Maybe you and your pals get down like that, but it's not something that I've ever done before. So again, thank you very much for listening. I just thought I'd do a quick one to keep you guys happy. Again, keep liking, subscribing, all that other YouTube stuff. It really helps out the channel and makes me keep making more. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. Cheers.